Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. John Wayne was bigger than life on movie screens. He was the best cowboy whose acting grabbed everyone's attention. But when he died, the real drama started behind closed doors. His money left his family crying, bringing up feelings, surprises, and questions no one expected. Who got what? And what secrets did his money reveal about the man behind the famous person? The story of John Wayne's money is as exciting as the movies that made him a Hollywood star, and it's about to get even more surprising. John Wayne, one of the most famous people in American movies, lived a life filled with wins on screen and problems behind closed doors. His family life was as busy as his job, shaped by 3 marriages and 7 children who carried both his name and his fame. Wayne's first marriage was to Josephine Cians, the daughter of a diplomat from Panama. The couple got married in 1933, and together they had 4 children, Michael, Tony, Patrick, and Melinda. For a while, this marriage gave Wayne some peace during his rise in Hollywood. But as his fame and work schedule got busier, problems started, leading to the end of the marriage. Even after the split, Wayne stayed close to his children's lives, making sure they shared in his success and understood how important family loyalty was. His second marriage was much shorter and didn't last long. Though it first seemed like good friendship, differences between Wayne and his wife were too big to fix, and divorce came soon. While that part of his personal life ended quickly, it showed the hard times Wayne had trying to balance the needs of his job with the needs of those closest to him. His third and last marriage was to Pa Plett, an actress from Peru. Together, they had 3 children, Ethan, Isa, and Marika. 4 years. The couple lived under the public eye as one of Hollywood's loved families. But by the mid-1970s, even this marriage could not handle the stress of Wayne's lifestyle. Though they separated, a deal made sure that Pa and her children were taken care of, and Wayne kept close ties with them despite the distance. Besides his family connections, Wayne's later years were hurt by a long fight with cancer. In 1964, he was told he had lung cancer, a sickness so bad that doctors took out one of his lungs and several ribs to save him. He amazingly survived, but his health never fully came back to its old strength. His reputation as the Duke, however, pushed him to keep working, a symbol of strength loved by fans across the world. Bad luck hit its final blow in the late 1970s when Wayne got stomach cancer. On June 11, 1979, at the age of 72, he died in Los Angeles. Many people believe that the start of his sickness began years earlier, on the set of his 1956 movie, The Conqueror. The movie was filmed in St. George, Utah, not far from a place where they tested nuclear bombs. Though the actors and crew were told it was safe, winds carried dangerous radiation across the filming place. Years later, reports showed that many who worked on the movie got cancer, including director Dick Powell and actress Susan Hayward. Out of 220 people on set, 91 were later diagnosed and almost half lost their lives. For Wayne, who had been a heavy smoker his whole life, the exposure was a terrible extra blow. The tragedy went far beyond Wayne. Many members of the production, including director Dick Powell and actress Susan Hayward, later died from cancer as well. As sadness swept through his family, there was also uncertainty. Wayne's loved ones cried over his loss while waiting for the reading of his will. Everyone wondered how would his huge estate be divided, and what surprises might be hidden in the details of his final wishes. And when the contents of his estate were finally revealed, the real drama began. Wayne's will, prepared with care and kept safely by his lawyers, was officially read in Los Angeles. His longtime lawyer and close friends were present, along with members of the family who gathered nervously to hear every word. Wayne's estate was worth about $6.8 million, a huge amount for its time. About $1 million came from houses and land he owned, including homes and land, while almost $5.75 million came from personal property, investments, bank accounts, and treasures collected over a lifetime of being a star. But money was only part of the story. What stirred up feelings most deeply was how he had chosen to divide it. The first and biggest people to get money were his 7 children. Wayne had always been known as a family man, despite his complicated love life, and he made sure that his children would get most of his money. This decision set the stage for how his fame would be kept not just on the movie screen, but also within the lives of those closest to him. One of the most surprising people left out of the will was his third wife, Parrell, from whom he had been separated. Though Parrell did not get anything directly through the will, she was protected with money by an earlier deal that kept her out of this division. For many, it was a reminder of Wayne's troubled personal life and the clear boundaries he drew when it came to his estate. In contrast, his first wife, Josephine, got something more personal and lasting. Through a trust, she was given $3,000 a month for life, with the rest of that trust set to help their 4 children after her death. It was not just money. It was Wayne's way of making sure that the woman who had been part of his earliest years of fame would be cared for even when he was gone. Wayne also thought of those who had worked alongside him for many years. His longtime secretary, Pat Stacey, was left $30,000, a big amount that recognized her loyalty and friendship during his later years. Another secretary, Mary St. John, was left $10,000. These gifts showed that Wayne did not forget the people who had kept his work and personal world steady while he carried the weight of being a star. Among the most interesting parts of the will were the personal items tied to his famous career. Costumes, collectibles, and treasures from the sets of his most famous movies were to be divided equally among his children. These weren't just props. They were real pieces of American movie history, items that carried the sweat and hard work of Wayne's decades-long career. To balance this with giving, Wayne said that leftover art pieces be given to charity, adding one final layer of giving to his fame. This carefully arranged estate spoke volumes about them and himself, practical but sentimental, focused on family, but mindful of loyalty and history. Every decision showed his desire to keep his image, his work, and his money in the hands of those he trusted most. But the story didn't end there. What happened next turned Wayne's memory into a public show. His children were faced with a choice: hold on to his treasures or share them with the world. Soon, collectibles from his career would hit the auction block, bringing in millions, and proving that even in death, John Wayne could still draw a crowd. In October 2011, many years after his death, John Wayne once again took center stage. This time, however, it wasn't on a Hollywood set or in front of a camera, but in a crowded auction hall where more than 700 pieces of his life went under the hammer. Put together by Heritage Auctions, the 2-day event turned into a whirlwind of emotions, memories, and sky-high bids. Fans, collectors, and admirers weren't just buying items, they were chasing pieces of history. By the end of the auction, the total had climbed to an amazing $5.4 million. What made the event so powerful was the mix of items and display. Each piece told a story, a reminder of the man who had become more than just a movie star. His last driver's license, given in 1977, sold for $89,695. To most people, a license is just plastic, but to his fans, it was a final official paper that had his name, Marion Morrison, and his unmistakable signature. The weapons and costumes carried even more weight. The holster and gun belt from El Dorado went for $77,675, an accessory that had once been strapped to Wayne's waist as he walked across the screen in one of his classic westerns. His eye patch from True Grit, where Hep played the unforgettable Rooster Cogburn, pulled in $47,800. It was a small, simple piece of cloth, but it symbolized one of his most famous performances. The biggest headline of the auction came from the sale of a green wool beret that Wayne had worn in the Green Berets. This single item brought in $179,250, shocking price that showed how much fans were willing to pay for a direct connection to the Duke. Another standout was the cowboy hat that Wayne wore in 3 different westerns: Big Jake, the Cowboys, and the Train Robbers. That piece alone brought in $119,500. Not all the prized possessions were clothing or props. His Golden Globe for True Grit went under the hammer too, finding a new home at the price of $143,400. It wasn't just a trophy. It was a recognition of the role that defined him for a new generation of fans and critics alike. Beyond these headline sales, there were hundreds of smaller but equally interesting items. Scripts marked with his notes, awards, furniture, and even personal desk items all found eager buyers. Each winning bid was more than just a purchase. It was a fan's way of owning a real piece of the legend's life. The auction was not only about money or collectibles. Part of the money was given to the John Wayne Cancer Foundation, because close to the actor's fame. Wayne had battled cancer himself, and this foundation was built to continue his fight long after he was gone. In this way, even in the middle of bidding wars, his name was tied to a greater mission, helping others. The event was more than an auction. It was a celebration, a reminder of how deeply Wayne had carved himself into American culture. Every gavel strike echoed with memories of his movies, his bigger-than-life personality, and the timeless stories he brought to life. To understand why these items meant so much to so many people, we must look back at the man behind the name John Wayne and at the journey from Marion Morrison to the Hollywood legend he became. John Wayne's story begins far from the bright lights of Hollywood in the quiet town of Winterset, Iowa, where he was born as Marion Robert Morrison in 1907. His childhood was one of ordinary beginnings, but his family's move to California during his teenage years would unknowingly set the stage for his change into one of the most famous figures in American movies. Growing up in Glendale, Wayne developed a strong work ethic, delivering newspapers and taking odd jobs to help his family. Yet, even then, he stood out, tall, athletic, and having a quiet confidence that drew others to him. At the University of Southern California, he seemed destined for greatness on the football field. Winning a scholarship, he quickly became part of the Trojan football team. But fate had other plans. A surfing accident badly hurt his shoulder, cutting short his athletic dreams and ending his hopes of a career in sports. That injury, however, opened a door that Wayne never could have predicted. No longer able to play football, he lost his scholarship and needed work. Through his USC connections, he landed a job at Fox Film Corporation, not as an actor, but in the prop department, carrying furniture and moving sets. It was here that he got his first glimpse of Hollywood's magic. Wayne's early years in film were far from glamorous. During the 1930s, he worked hard in Poverty Row, the nickname for the studios that churned out low-budget westerns. Over the course of the decade, he appeared in almost 80 movies, sometimes playing the lead, sometimes just filling space. These B-movies were forgettable to most audiences, but for Wayne, they were invaluable. They became his training ground, teaching him how to ride, fight, deliver lines, and project the steady, rugged presence that would one day define him. His screen personality, the slow draw, the deliberate walk, the calm authority was being forged in these cheap productions. Yet success always seemed just out of reach. That changed in 1939 when director John Ford cast him in Stagecoach. Ford had noticed Wayne years earlier, waiting for the right opportunity to give him a role that would showcase his true potential. As the Ringo Kid, Wayne burst onto the screen, not as a second-rate cowboy, but as a fully formed star. Stagecoach was a box office success, and Wayne's Risetto stardom officially began. Overnight, he changed from a B-movie regular to a household name. The 1940s and 1950s cemented his fame. Wayne became the face of the American Western, embodying characters who symbolize strength, honor, and resilience. Movies like Red River, The Quiet Man, The Searchers, and Rio Bravo showcase not only his commanding presence, but also his versatility. Whether as a tough cattle driver, a romantic Irishman, or a haunted Civil War veteran, Wayne carried an authenticity that resonated with audiences. He was no longer Marion Morrison from Iowa. He was the Duke, larger than life, and firmly etched into Hollywood's golden age. And yet, Wayne was never content to be just an actor. As his fame grew, so did his ambition. He took greater control of his career, venturing into producing and even directing, determined to shape not just his image, but the very stories Hollywood told. What began as a small-town boy's detour from football had turned into a career that defined an era. By the late 1940s, John Wayne was no longer just an actor waiting for good roles to fall into his lap. He had learned that real power in Hollywood came from controlling the stories being told. Determined to shape his own path, he founded production companies, first with John Wayne Productions and later with Batjack Productions. These ventures gave him the freedom to choose scripts, hire talent, and build projects that reflected his vision of American heroism. One of his earliest independent works, Angel and the Bad Man in 1947, was not only successful, but also marked Wayne as more than just a cowboy in front of the camera. He was now a force behind it. His reputation grew through both box office hits and critical success. Movies like The Alamo, which he also directed, and El Dorado cemented his reputation as a storyteller who could captivate audiences across generations. But it was True Grit in 1969 that brought him the crowning achievement of his career, an Academy Award for Best Actor. With his iconic eye patch and gravelly voice as Rooster Cogburn, Wayne finally silenced critics who had long dismissed him as a mere action star. The Oscar was proof of his range and staying power, coming more than 3 decades after his Hollywood debut. Yet Wayne's influence was not limited to the movie screen. Off-screen, he became one of the loudest political voices in Hollywood. A fierce conservative, Wayne used his movies and his platform to promote his ideals. Nowhere was this clearer than in The Green Berets in 1968, a Vietnam War movie he produced at a time when the conflict was dividing America. The movie was more than entertainment. It was a statement of support for US involvement abroad. Beyond film, Wayne worked with Hollywood's right-wing organizations and openly backed candidates like Ronald Reagan, who would later become president. His politics made him a polarizing figure, but they also ensured that he remained relevant in the national conversation. Through his decades of acting, producing, and directing, Wayne built not just a career, but an empire. His companies brought in steady profits. His movies dominated the box office, and his political connections gave him power that extended beyond Hollywood. By the end of his life, Wayne had amassed a fortune that symbolized both his success and his relentless work ethic. With money, fame, and political clout, the Duke had seemingly achieved everything. But the question that lingers is this: when the final curtain falls, what truly endures, the wealth he left behind, or the larger-than-life legacy he carved into American culture? John Wayne's death in 1979 left his family weighed down not only by grief, but also by the stark emotional reality of his absence. His children recalled a man who was tough yet tender, a giant in their lives whose presence filled every room. Ethan Wayne put it simply: "My father was tough but very loving. He didn't talk much, but he could make his few words very impactful and meaningful." Today, his children carry forward his mission through John Wayne Enterprises and the John Wayne Cancer Foundation, honoring his values with every act of service. Friends and fellow stars spoke with reverence and deep emotion. Maureen O'Hara, who had been his friend for nearly 4 decades, appeared before Congress just weeks before his death to champion a congressional gold medal for the Duke. With tears in her voice, she said, "I have known John Wayne for 39 years. And in those 39 years, I have called him my dearest friend, my best friend." To the people of the world, John Wayne is not just an actor, and a very fine actor. John Wayne is the United States of America. Kirk Douglas, who'd worked with Wayne on several movies, offered a different but equally resonant tribute. Despite their political differences, he admired Wayne's professionalism and unwavering work ethic. He declared, "I strongly believe that John Wayne should receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. He is an authentic chunk of Americana. His personal and artistic life represent the best qualities of America admired by people around the world. He has always been a strong force for the American way of life." Even Frank Sinatra, who had not always agreed with Wayne's views, acknowledged the impact of his legacy. At a medal ceremony honoring Wayne's contributions, Sinatra said, "For over half a century, Mr. Wayne has served honorably as America's symbol to the world of the highest morals and prudent standard of our society." In the quiet halls of his family home, the Duke's children reflected on responsibilities now shifted onto their shoulders. They spoke less about money and more about honor, how to preserve their father's name and use his legacy for good. John Wayne's lasting influence cannot be measured just by the fortune he left behind. It lives on through the foundation that fights cancer, through museum exhibits that celebrate the man behind the legend, and through the countless fans who still see him as the embodiment of courage and authenticity. What endures beyond the tears and the inheritance is a legacy that refuses to fade, built on the principles of grit, loyalty, and the unwavering spirit of the Duke. And now, after hearing the words of his family and the moving tributes from fellow stars, what do you think John Wayne's true legacy is? His movies, his values, or the way he inspired those around him? Share your thoughts in the comments below.